My deck isn't working, and no little blue pill is going to get it up and running again. While reviewing the February Humble Choice bundle, my battery got fried, and whether fair or not, I'm blaming one game in particular. Luckily, I managed to play all but the last 2 games before disaster struck, so nearly all the gameplay footage you see is hands-on with my deck. As for the last 2 games, well, you'll see. I'll review every game in the bundle and let you know whether it's worth your cash or just plain trash. Plus, I'll announce the winner of last month's Steam Key giveaway. Want one of the games on screen? Drop a comment with your pick, and I'll randomly select a winner to be announced next month. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Immortals of Aveum is a first-person magic shooter that, despite all the flashy spells, mostly feels like a regular first-person shooter in a wizard robe. The setting? 5 nations locked into a magic war. Your role? The special chosen one, because of course you are. There's gear, upgrades, and puzzles about as challenging as remembering your email password, making it a decent but uninspired action game wrapped in a fantasy skin. Then there's the real magic trick, making EA's game launcher appear in your life instead of a Steam key. Humble gives you an EA app key because nothing says convenience like downloading another launcher you didn't ask for. You can get it running on the deck, but it's about as fun as assembling IKEA furniture with missing instructions. Performance on the deck is rough. Frame rate swings between 15 and 35 frames per second on default low settings, and even boosting fidelity super resolution to ultra performance only gets you 25 to 45 frames per second. This, of course, brings with it some noticeable visual downgrades, and with just 1 hour and 10 minutes of battery life, you won't be fleeing spells for long before needing a recharge. Here's the kicker, it's already 85% off on Steam for $8.99 US, and even at that price, it's a tough sell. Not a bad game, not a great one. If you're really into spell slinging and can tolerate the frame rate struggles, maybe give it a shot, otherwise, your deck deserves better. If the first-person shooter Fear had an unhinged cousin hopped up on energy drinks, it'd be Trepang2. This game cranks the chaos to 11, letting you slide into a room at breakneck speed, go invisible, and turn enemies into fine red mist, all while feeling like an absolute murder machine. With an average playtime of 9 hours, it never drags, delivering pure, unfiltered carnage from start to finish. You're not just a super soldier, you're a walking war crime. Bullet time and cloaking let you pull off insane stunts, like sliding across the floor while unloading an SMG, roundhouse kicking a guy into orbit, then vanishing to reappear behind some poor soul for a shotgun to the spine finish. The AI doesn't make it easy either. They flank, throw grenades, and generally don't appreciate being turned into paste. The gunplay is phenomenal. Every weapon feels overpowered in the best way possible. On the Steam Deck, drop the settings to medium and it'll run at a locked 60 frames per second, keeping all that glorious destruction smooth. Battery life sits at around 1 hour and 30 minutes, which is honestly impressive given the sheer amount of explosions and blood splatter. Controls feel great with the deck's default layout, but turning on gyro aiming helps nail those mid-sprint headshots. Trepang2 is an adrenaline rush from start to finish. Fast, brutal, and an absolute power trip. If you love shooters that reward speed, aggression, and reckless abandon, this one's a no-brainer. Grab your deck and prepare for carnage. If you're all about putting your deck to good use, whether that means discovering hidden gems or just an excuse to ignore real-world responsibilities, then hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. After all, a well-loved deck is a happy deck. Total War Pharaoh Dynasties isn't just unplayable on the Steam Deck. It's a full-blown disaster. I've dealt with bad optimization, but this game may have actually killed my deck. The one silver lining? The key includes both Total War Pharaoh and its Dynasties expansion, so at least you're getting the full package. Too bad that full package is about as useful as a chariot with square wheels. From the start, the game greets you with an epilepsy warning. Thoughtful, sure, but less so when the screen constantly flickers with a ghostly after-image of the warning. The irony is almost poetic. The first tutorial loaded fine, which tricked me into thinking everything might be okay. it wasn't. I tried loading the second tutorial, then the actual game, and the deck completely crashed, forcing a full system reboot every time. And it gets worse. Now my deck crashes if I unplug the charger or the power output gets too high. That's right, my battery is probably fried. Coincidence? Maybe. But I wouldn't be surprised if some cursed Egyptian code is behind this. To top it off, it even corrupted all the footage taken before the crashes. The game didn't just kill my deck, it wiped the evidence, like some kind of digital assassin. So, consider this a public service announcement. Do not play Total War Pharaoh Dynasties on the Steam Deck. It's completely unplayable, and if my experience is anything to go by, it might just take your deck with it. If you are hoping for a handheld empire building experience, look elsewhere. This one deserves to be buried, no tomb, no mummification, just let it disappear into the sands of time. Fabledom is a city builder with fairy tale charm, but it's also kind of forgettable. It's relaxing, sure, but the gameplay never really grabs you. You'll expand your whimsical kingdom, keep citizens happy, and balance pollution, noise, and water access, because even fairy tale peasants have zoning complaints. The visuals are charming, the world is procedurally generated, and the whole thing leans more towards cozy than compelling. Playing on the deck came with its own struggles. Steam auto-loaded a community layout made by some muppet who apparently enjoys suffering, setting the trackpad speed to glacial levels. Swapping to the default mouse and keyboard setup fixed it, but you'll want to tweak controls for smoother shortcuts. Performance-wise, the frame rate hovers between 25 and 40 frames per second, and battery life sits at a surprisingly low 1 hour and 20 minutes. The biggest issue? The tiny text. And when it comes to text, size absolutely matters. Squinting at on-screen instructions gets old fast, and while the deck's magnification tool helps, I don't want to have to rely on it. Fabledom is fine for a casual city building fix, but it doesn't do much to stand out. The whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd rather be playing Against the Storm. Now that's how you do fantasy city building right. It's time to announce the winner of last month's Steam Key giveaway. Congratulations on getting that Prodeus key you wanted on Data Stratifer. This is the second time he's won a key now, which just goes to show folks, with so few people after those keys, your chances of winning are really good. On Data Stratifer, you know the deal, hit me up on Reddit to claim your key. If you like deck builders, but wish they had more drama, shifty alliances, and the option to talk your way out of trouble instead of just throwing hands, Griftlands is for you. It's got one of the deepest, most reactive stories I've seen in a roguelike. Your choices actually matter, and if you double-cross someone, don't be surprised when they come back later with a grudge and a lead pipe. Instead of one deck, you get two. Combat for fights, negotiation for arguments. The latter plays like Slay the Spire meets a political debate, except here, BSing your way through actually works. Every card you play gains XP, and once it levels up, you get to pick between two upgrades, making every run feel more tailored to your playstyle. Managing relationships also plays a huge role. Make friends and you'll get discounts and allies. Make enemies and suddenly shopkeepers are price gouging you out of spite. It's all about knowing when to charm and when to throw down. The game runs at a smooth 60 frames per second on the deck, with a battery life of about 2 hours and 50 minutes. The default controls take some getting used to, but once you adjust, it plays just fine. With an average runtime of 17.5 hours, Griftlands is full of replayability, strategy, and con artistry. It's one of those games where just one more run turns into a late night spiral of bad decisions, but at least this time, they're in the game. Tales and Tactics is a single-player auto-battler roguelike that borrows heavily from teamfight tactics, so much so that it even stole part of the name. Instead of sweaty multiplayer matches, you're prepping for a grand tournament, which sounds cool, but in reality, the story is just an excuse for different encounters rather than something that actually pulls you in. The gameplay is exactly what you'd expect. Drop creatures on hexes, chase synergies, slap on some items, and pray they don't get steamrolled. Once combat starts, you're just a spectator, so if your brilliant plan turns out to be a disaster, all you can do is sit back and watch the carnage unfold. Losing isn't the end of the world though, since each run earns you points to unlock permanent bonuses, making future attempts a little easier. Is it bad? No. Is it groundbreaking? Also no. It's like eating plain toast. Fine, but you're not exactly craving it later. The performance on the deck fluctuates between 35 and 50 frames per second, and the battery lasts about 1 hour and 50 minutes. Controls work as expected with a trackpad for mouse movement and triggers for clicks, so no adjustments needed. If you're really into auto battlers, you might get some enjoyment out of this, but for me, it's just kind of there. It works, it's functional, but in a sea of better roguelikes, it's not one I see myself coming back to. Since my deck's battery gave up the ghost, I couldn't play Dungeon Master or My Little Universe on the Steam Deck for this video. Instead, I played them using a controller on my old PC, which is rocking decade-old hardware, making the experience about as close to the deck as I could get. Plus, I already owned My Little Universe and put in some hours on the deck before, so I can still share my past experience with it. Apologies for not testing these last two directly on the deck, and thanks for understanding. Now let's dive into the final games. Naheulbeuk's Dungeon Master isn't just hard to pronounce. It wants to be evil genius with a fantasy twist, but ends up feeling like the discount knockoff. You manage a dungeon, keep minions happy, rake in gold, and fend off adventurers who refuse to respect your evil empire. Sounds fun, but in practice it's just fine. Not bad, not great, like complimentary stale bread at a dungeon tavern. It does have some charm. The in-game Dungeons Fund membership agreement got a legit chuckle out of me, and the writing has a light-hearted, tongue-in-cheek fantasy parody vibe. But humour can only carry a game so far, and the gameplay itself is just serviceable. The controls are decent on a controller, but menu navigation for rooms, minions, and furniture is a hassle. It's not unplayable, but you'll probably start wishing for a mouse before long. On the deck, I only got a glimpse before my battery met its untimely demise, but from what I saw, gameplay hovers around 35 frames per second, while cinematics dip to 20. Not great, but stable enough. As for battery life, even though my deck's battery is about as useful as a rock, thanks to a big assist from Mr. Dimmery, we've worked out that the battery life is probably about 1.5 hours on the LCD deck. Not great, but not exactly unexpected. How Long to Beat estimates around 58 hours of content, but with limited data. Personally, I won't be coming back. It's a passable dungeon management sim, but when Evil Genius exists, why bother? If you're desperate for more dungeon building, maybe give it a shot, but I don't think it's even worth the storage space on your deck. My Little Universe is one of those games that seems basic on the surface, but somehow sinks its hooks into you. It's a simple mix of hack and slash and resource management. Yet there I was saying just one more hex, until I realized that my son had been up 30 minutes past bedtime, looking like he'd pulled off some great heist, while my wife stood in the doorway like the final boss of the night. The loop is straightforward. Chop trees, mine rocks, gather resources, unlock upgrades, expand the map, repeat. Every new hex opens up more to explore, making it weirdly addictive, like playing as an intergalactic land developer with a pickaxe. There are dungeons with boss fights too, but don't expect anything intense. Combat is simple, resource gathering is mindless in a good way, and the steady progression makes it perfect for pick up and play sessions. On the deck, it runs smooth as ever. I put 5 hours into this game many months ago, and I never noticed any frame rate dips or stutters. Again, huge shout out to Mr. Dimmery for checking battery life. The LCD deck should get you a whopping 4 hours of gameplay, certainly more than enough for extended sessions on the go. It's simple, charming, and way more engaging than it has any right to be. I almost gave My Little Universe the Deck Play Under the Covers award, but it's just a bit too stimulating to recommend for winding down at night. If you're after something casual and satisfying beyond your love life, My Little Universe is an easy recommendation. Alright, we've gone through all the games, but now it's time for the big question. Is this bundle worth your cash or just plain trash? Before we get into that, if you've enjoyed watching me play with my deck for most of this time, go ahead and tap that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell. Now, let's wrap this up. This bundle just isn't worth it. Sure, the price checks out, but most of these games aren't even worth adding to your Steam library. One of them doesn't even let you, and one very well may be cursed. And with so many strategy games, it feels like Humble missed the memo that Steam just had the RTS Fest, where you probably picked up better games you actually want to play. I'm generally a very optimistic person, but this month's bundle, like a diet of nothing but cheese and white bread, that's a hard pass. That's the end of the video. As for my deck, I'm waiting on a replacement battery. Fingers crossed it does the trick. In the meantime, I might just use this as an excuse to grab the OLED model when it's back in stock later this month. Of course, I'll have to paint the red logo blue so my wife doesn't notice. See you next time, deckheads.